Hey guys, this is Jason Collins. I posted these pictures a little while ago in the Canon Rebel group, and this is a client that came into my studio today, and he was very concerned about his the color and discoloration and texture of his skin. And he was very concerned about that, to the point where he wasn't really that interested in having photos taken. And I assured him that we'd be able to help him out with that, and through the magic of Photoshop we were able to get his skin cleaned up to this point. Now, a lot of people might go further than this, but I err on the side of natural. The gentleman has some texture to his skin. He has some discoloration to his skin. And to completely eliminate that, in my opinion, would just be dishonest. It wouldn't look like him. People would see it and they would automatically know that he had had some major Photoshop work done on his pictures. And that's not what I want people to see. I want people to look at photos and just recognize it as the person, and not necessarily be like, oh well, yeah, you had a ton of Photoshop work done on that. So anyway, once again, this is what we started with, and this is what we ended up with. And a couple of you guys had mentioned that you were interested in seeing my workflow on this. So what we're going to do is, anytime I shoot, I tether into Capture One, and it's good for the client, it's good for me. We get to sit down and really collaborate on the look that the client is going for, what they're expecting. They're able to see in real time what we're producing in the camera. In my studio, I have a 55-inch HD screen on the wall, and you can see it from pretty much anywhere in the studio. And so it's really a collaborative effort between me and my clients, where we come up with pictures that they like, and then we go through and we sit down and the clients select the images that they prefer, and we give the ones that we're going to move forward with editing a green light, and the ones that we don't want, we give them a red light. And so that just makes sure that when the clients leave the studio, that they have images that they're happy with. So what we're going to do here is, obviously this is the image, the after, this is the before, and so we're going to take another one of his images that he selected, and we are going to do a bit of retouching on it, and we're going to show you guys how I do that. And we are going to pop it over into Photoshop, and I'm going to show you guys just really quickly how we do that. So the first thing we do is we make two copies of our background layer on Windows-based machines. That's Control-J. So you hit Control-J twice, and then we are going to rename these layers. The middle layer, we're going to rename it Low Frequency Blur. And then the top one, we are going to name it High Frequency Texture. Now, and we won't be working with the bottom layer at all. We just want that to be there in case we need to revert or look at something else. So that's why we hang on to that one. Let me get this screen out of the way here really quickly. Come on, there we go. And this is really a simple process, and I wish that I could say that I came up with this process on my own. That would not be true. I'll include a link down when I post this video. I'll include the link to where I found this technique, and I found it on YouTube. Big shock, right? But really, it's super simple. Let me see here. I'm going to get my notes out. Even though I've done this several times, it's still a bit difficult for me to follow. But it's really simple. So you just take and turn off the top one, and we're going to be working with the low frequency blur layer first. And so you just go up here to your filter, and you come down to blur, and you come down to Gaussian blur. Now, when people blur skin texture, in my opinion, a lot of times they really tend to overdo it. So go light on this instead, as opposed to, you know, super heavy-handed. I usually pick the area that is that needs the most work. Okay, so we'll zoom in on this forehead area here just a little bit, and then literally all you do is you just increase your radius on your blur until you get to the point where you can still sort of see. This is too much. Okay, this is too much because we can't see anything under here, and that's just too much for me. So I like to back that up something about, we're probably going to be looking at about 13 to 15, something about like that. Maybe a little more. Let's go 17 and see how that works. I think 17 is going to be good for this image, so we're going to go with that one right there. The next thing we do is we do our high frequency texture, because we want to make sure that we are preserving the skin texture. And so for this, we go to image, we go to apply image, okay, and then we select the low frequency blur layer, and we want to make sure that we are using the correct blending mode here. And for this one, the correct blending mode is subtract. Okay, and so we click OK. The scale on this is going to be 2, and the offset is going to be 128. So to recap really quickly, your layer that you're choosing is going to be the one that we just blurred, the low frequency blur layer. RBG channel, blending mode is subtract, opacity is 100%, scale is 2, and offset is 128. Okay. Now we go over here and we change the blending mode of this layer to vivid. Let's see here, linear light. I'm sorry, we change it to linear light. Now really what we see here is we don't see any difference in, right? If I turn off all of those layers and go to the original one, it looks exactly like it did to begin with. So now I'm going to show you where the magic comes in. So let's zoom in here on the forehead just a little bit. And we are going to go up here and we're going to take our lasso tool. And I've already got mine set for a previous image. So I'm going to turn the feather all the way off on this. And I'll show you guys how this works. So you take the lasso tool and you just lasso a spot in here. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't have to be super accurate because this is just for reference. And then what I do is I click on select and mask. My computer's having to think here. Wow, it really doesn't normally take that long. I guess the screen recording software is probably bogging it down a little bit. But what we're going to do here is we're going to set a feather, meaning the amount of blur that happens to the inside and outside of a line when we make a selection. Wow, that's really bogging that down. Hang on a second here. I'm gonna see if I can free up some memory for us here real quick. Hang on here. Okay, I had to turn off a couple things to free up some resources, but we've got our selection here, and you'll notice that the edge of it is really hard, and that's not what we want. We want to be able to get that edge feathered, and the way you do that is you adjust your feather. Now, if you don't see the same thing in your select and mask that I do, I have my view set to overlay, and then I have my color set to red. So if yours is not like mine, then you can make that adjustment. Really, it's helpful in setting the feather so you can see. So anyway, we just begin to adjust our feather over until we have something that looks about like this. So you can see these edges are pretty soft here. It's usually going to be somewhere between, 20 and 30. I think 17 is probably not quite enough. 30 is probably going to be too much. So somewhere right in there. We'll say 26.4 looks good, and we'll cancel out of this. Remember that number though, 26.4. Your number will be different than mine, but for this video we're using 26.4. We come right up here, type in 26.4, and then we Control D to deselect. Now we're ready to actually do the selection that we're going to be working with. Now pay some attention. Don't get too close to the hair and things like that, because this is going to be feathered by 26.4 pixels. So keep that in mind. So now make sure that your middle layer is active, and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and then just adjust the blur over here until the blotchiness begins to disappear, and you're dealing with a relatively smooth overall skin color. Now if you go too far on it, you're getting crazy here. You're getting out of hand. We're probably going to be looking at this one at somewhere about 55, I think probably will look good on this one. Just like that, and say OK. And then Control D to deselect. I'm going to show you what we did here. Hold down Alt and click the eyeball on the bottom layer. This is before, this is after. See, it's already looking better. This is before, this is after. Okay? And so we just go around the face and we look for these areas that have blotchiness. Okay? We're not doing anything about the texture. Okay? All of these bumps and stuff up here are texture items, and we're just trying to even out the skin tone a little bit here, right? So we're going to come down here to this section, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take our lasso tool, and we are going to come around here, come up right into here, and then Filter, Gaussian Blur, Control D. Again, I'll show you the before and the after. The before and the after. Okay? Hold down Shift, drag your picture over. We're going to work on this section over here just a little bit. Same thing. Just pull this in right around here. Filter, Gaussian Blur. Way better. And so you can just look at any areas on the face that have, some areas that the skin tone is uneven, noticeably uneven, right? And we just work on that. Maybe on the nose. Normally the nose needs help with texture more than tones, really. But everyone's skin's different. We'll find that there is no hard and fast rule. So already with this gentleman, if we go back and we look at the before and the after, we've already accomplished a lot just by evening out some of those skin tones, right? So now what we need to do is we need to work on the skin texture. So we'll come back up here on the forehead, and we're going to do that on the top high frequency texture layer, and we're going to use the clone stamp tool. And so because we're only changing the texture of the skin, not the tone, the texture. So we just pick a spot where there is a good clear skin texture, and then we just begin to paint over some of these areas and randomly reselect your reference point. And I like to keep it, pretty close to where I'm working, so that way it's not making huge dramatic changes to the skin. Again, I mentioned this earlier. I'm a real firm believer in less is more. Don't make changes to people's appearance that will cause them to not be noticed by their friends and family, or recognized rather. Now I will say this: if you are dealing with an image for your portfolio, or an artistic image, I guess would be a good example, you don't necessarily have to follow the same rules that you do with portraiture. If I'm working on an image that is going to go into my portfolio, or it's an image that I just really like, and maybe I'm gonna have a canvas or a large format print done to go in my studio, my editing style on a picture like that would be very much different than what my editing style would be for a client portrait like this. Those pictures that I'm using for personal projects or whatever are not necessarily intended to be accurate representations of the client. I'm looking for probably a more you have a bit more artistic license, I guess, if you're doing a project for display rather than a project for a client. Okay, so just in this brief amount of time here, we have really done a good job on retexturing this gentleman's forehead. And again, I'll go back and I will do Alt and show you the before and the after. The before and the after. Okay? And so I would just do the exact same thing on different areas of the face where we have problem areas. Again, with the rubber stamp tool, we come up here and we're just going to go around these areas where there's some texture issues that we want to clean up, and do the same thing and just work over these. And then I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go over this, or I'm going to fast forward the video rather. I'm going to go over this, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do some refinements. Now, we'll say this. One thing I forgot to mention earlier when we were starting on this is make sure that your opacity is somewhere between 35 and 40, I guess. I found that 37% works really well for my workflow. Now, I don't use a tablet. I've got one. I just haven't invested the time necessary in teaching my hand and eye how to cooperate on using the tablet. So I do all my retouching with a mouse, and 37% opacity and 100% flow, and then obviously current layer. Those are the settings that I use for my clone stamp tool. So I'm going to fast forward the video again as I work on this side, and then we'll come back and take a look at some other refinements that you can do. Okay, so this is really close to where I would probably stop on this one. Another good thing to do when you're doing this is work on it, and then once you get it to the point where you think you're ready to go with it, take a break, walk away, come back in a little bit, because we are really it's really easy for us to get into the over editing mode and find that we've over edited the picture. Zoom out a lot. Don't stay zoomed in at 100 or 150% or whatever in trying to work there. But really quickly again, before and after, it's already looking absolutely fabulous, right? And if you want to, all of these adjustment layers that we've made are you can adjust opacity on them to make changes that that might make the edits suit your style or your look better. But right now, this is what I would call done at this stage for this guy. And what I would do is I would come to the top and I would make a stamp layer. You do that with Control-Shift-Alt-E, and basically that just gives you a combined layer of all the work that you've done. Now, at this point, there's a couple of things I would do. I would go in, and I don't recommend that you use the healing brush tool as your only tool for retouching, but it does work good for cleaning up some things. If we have really large blemishes or whatever, we can get away with you know, like I'll come up here and I'll show you, because there's some things up here that I want to clean up. Like right over here, okay, this, I would probably use the healing brush tool in here. You have to be really careful with the healing brush tool, because a lot of times it will get rid of the skin texture and it just doesn't look good. But I will use the healing brush tool to clean up, you know, stray hairs, or if there's just some things that I didn't get as much improvement with the previous methods, then I'll use a healing brush tool. You know, I just say use it sparingly, and don't allow it to be your only method for retouching. It does a good job for some things, but you can get really sort of overboard with it if you're not very, very careful. So see, some of these things in here, healing brush tool works really well here. You know, just be very careful and use it sparingly. I mean, like anything else, there's no one single tool that we use. That's why Photoshop has various tools, and so we just need to learn to use all of those. I'm not super crazy about this highlight that's peeked through on the nose. I like it on the eye over here. So let's see what happens if we try cleaning it up here with this. I think that works just fine and dandy. Now, the next thing that we can do, and I'll show you, this is another tool that you just need to have in your arsenal. Let me think of a good way to say this. The skin smoothing neural filter is great if you use it properly, and I'll show you how I use it. I leave the blur slider exactly where it is by default, and then I crank the smoothness all the way up to +50, okay? And that's going to give you a really smooth, almost flawless, unnatural looking skin. You can look at this here, and this is not what I would consider to be a deliverable, okay? When you do your output, there's many ways that you can do it. If you think you're going to come back and change it, you can output it as a smart filter. I just do it as a new layer, and then I'm going to show you guys what I do here. This is way, especially for a guy, way too much overdone skin. So hold down Alt, click your mask to apply an inverted mask. Pick up your brush, make sure that you've got white, and make sure that your opacity is, again, somewhere around 35 to 40%, and then just pick areas where you think you could use a little bit of smoothing, and you don't have to use a ton, right? The whole idea here is not that we're trying to create Barbie doll skin, or make things look completely unnatural. We're just trying to make our client look their best. And I think retouching a lot of times we really allow ourselves to overdo it. There's a line between making our clients look their best and making our clients look overdone. And I'm not a fan of overdone, especially on guys. It's okay for a guy to have a little bit of a rugged look to him, okay? And then, you can even come over here and adjust the opacity on that. Just a hint of it. Okay, so this is what I would consider to be a completely retouched image as far as skin goes, right? Now, I'm going to do one other thing for you here. I am going to make another stamp visible layer. I'm going to add in a curves adjustment layer. And right now what we're going to be working on is we are going to be working on specifically the eyes. Okay, I see eyes get overdone a lot, and I'm going to show you how I do it. I raise my exposure in the highlights about this much, okay, and then I invert my mask, and I get a soft round brush of about, again, 35% works good for me. I usually make my brush about the size of the iris of the eye, okay? And, well, all right, let me back up here for a second. Make it smaller and go around the inside of the eye. Let's go ahead and bump this up to 100%. I was getting ahead of myself. At 100% opacity, I go around the inside of the eye, okay? And we'll do this one, around the inside of the eye. This is going to give us a little bit of pop to the eye. And then the next thing I do is I turn my opacity down again to somewhere around 30, 35%, something like that, okay? And then I make my brush about the size of the iris, and I just go around the socket of the eye, just around this area right here, okay? Now I'm basically done, and I'm going to show you the difference between this and this, okay? Just a tiny little bit. You don't have to give people alien eyes in order to add some snap and some pop to their eye. Just a little bit of lift to the highlights, and then just a little bit of really light 30, 35 opacity around the sockets of the eye, just to bring a little bit more light into there. Now, maybe one of the other things I would do to this, even though this is a guy, I might come in and I might put in another adjustment layer. I'm going to clip these. Put in a let's see here. Let's put in a I tell you what, let's do for his lips. Let's go ahead and do another stamp adjustment layer, or stamp visible layer. Let's go to filter. Let's go to Adobe Camera Raw. We're going to do a couple things here, and we may even apply this. We may even include the eyes in this. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to raise. We're going to raise vibrance and saturation, and then probably also what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise texture just a little bit, and then maybe also raise clarity a little bit, about like that. Okay, now that's way too much for everything else, right? So we are going to again hold down Alt, drop a black mask onto this, and what I do on this one is I take my brush and I go all the way to 100% opacity, and then we paint over the lips. I don't like the way that this is doing right here, so we're going to pull that down just like that. And then, see, way too much for at 100%. But now that I've got it where I want it, I can come in here and I can pull this down to 50%. There we go. Just a tiny little bit more color to the lips. If this was a female, I might go a little bit. I might go a little bit higher on that, you know, just to add some more pop to the lips. But I like that even with this guy. That looks okay. The eyes look good. Everything's good. We're going to call this a done deal. So this is how, you know, this is how I would retouch the skin. Now we can get into, you know, there's obviously some other things that need to be done to this before we can consider it a retouched photograph. And this is where your spot healing brush comes back in. So you would go over this sweater and you would delint the sweater so that you so that you're cleaning up all these little white spots and things like that. That's what I would do, and then this would be pretty much a finished image. So anyway, I hope that this has been an informative video. I hope that you've learned some things from it, and we will go right back in and I'll show you once again, this is the before and this is the after. This is the before and this is the after. Hey, I'm Jason Collins. Thanks a lot. Let me know in the comments what are the things you guys would like to see, because I really want to this group to become a clearinghouse for information. I want you guys to walk away having learned something and making your photography better than it was before, because I firmly believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. The better we get at photography, the better photography is for everyone. So let me know what you think. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, that's great too. Let me know, because I'm open to improving, and you know, I just want to help you guys out. So have a great day.